Welcome to the Recover You podcast with Kylene and Patrick Terhune. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
I just want to let you know today that words cannot espresso what you mean to me.
Wow. Wow. Nailed it.
So it's technically, you're listening on a Wednesday, probably. Well, I know people listen throughout the week, but we drop these on Wednesdays. It's a Saturday morning here.
Woo!
And we had some delicious coffee this morning.
And bacon.
And bacon.
And eggs.
Yeah, it was a nice, slow morning.
Avocado.
We worked out. It was good.
Salsa.
Got to hang out a little bit, which
Yeah.
is not usual because normally you're in a support group on Saturday morning. So it was really cool.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was nice. I tried a homemade peanut butter latte.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty good.
And I had coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Black
coffee.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So today we are talking about talking. We're gonna be discussing the topic of communication.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And why it's so important and how we can do it effectively throughout the recovery process. So there are so many reasons that this is important. I think over the course of the past couple of years that we've sort of been looking and being aware and going through our own journey and everything, we realize what a struggle it is for so many people. And thankfully, we found that this was a pretty good strength that we had was open communication and clear communication. And so that's something we want to share some tools and techniques on, because we do find that it's one of the reasons I think that we're still together is because we were able to communicate so well.
Yeah.
And so if we can pass that on and help you guys through your own recovery journey by learning how to communicate or improving communication or increasing communication, whatever the case may be, that's what we want to do with this episode. So, I mentioned several episodes ago about human design and being a manifester and a little bit about what that means, but I'm just going to bring that up again because one of the things I think that happens very often is that we sort of assume that other people know what we're thinking. Like we assume that they're on the same page and working towards the same goal, or we think that we've said something before, or we just sometimes subconsciously expect our spouses to mind read, right?
Yep.
And as a manifester, I am somebody that has to initiate and my profile, I'm an informer as well. So it works really well with my business because I learn a lot. I love education. I gather a lot of information and then I teach and I inform and I share, right? So in the business world, it works great for me. But in the personal life, sometimes it can be frustrating because as women, sometimes we don't always want to initiate things or be the informer about what's going on in our heads. We wish that you could mind read, right? And I'm just bringing that up because I think that's maybe not even just a manifestor thing. I think sometimes it's a human thing that we don't always want to have to share what's in our head. We just want you to respond a certain way. And as much as I understand that, because obviously I just shared that I feel that way sometimes, that's just not reasonable. Our spouses cannot mind read. So if we want something to happen, we have to first identify in our own minds what it is what our feelings are and what the outcome is that we want. And we talked about that in some of the previous episodes about, how do you learn what's underneath the emotions you're feeling and doing some of that deeper work first, learning how to tap into your body and your thoughts and your emotions, that can help you become a better communicator, because ultimately what is the best thing to communicate is that end result, right? I'm feeling this way, which means, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, or I want, or I'm feeling insecure, or, things like that. One of that just brought up a memory, because one of the things that I remember you went to your therapist about at one point was me having questions about certain things. And I think, being later in the evening and stuff like that. And you brought that up to him as a concern. And I love your therapist. And one of the things that he said was, what is it? Would it be possible for her to, instead of asking the specific question, like instead of me saying, well, what was this specific scenario? Or what about, this woman, what did this mean? Or, whatever, getting specific and triggering and bringing up the actual behavior, right? Could I just tell you what's underlying that, which is, hey, I'm feeling insecure. Right. That was a huge, I think, like,
it helped you shift because I was trying to answer those questions or not answer those questions. And then it allowed me to be present for your emotions.
Well, and so that's what I think is tying right into what we're talking about, which is if you can figure out, well, why do I want to know this? And what is it that I'm trying to get from this conversation? Or what is this emotion trying to tell me? That's what you can end up communicating there. And he was right. When I'm asking those questions, what's the outcome of that goal? I feel insecure. I want some affirmation from you. Right. So that was a really cool reframe. I think a really neat way of doing that. And then another reason, just sort of thinking along those same lines, learning how to communicate well about what's going on in your heart and your mind and your feelings is part of what we talk about so much of establishing safety in the relationship. Because if I can come to you and say, I'm feeling insecure, and maybe even I follow, and I often will, because what's in my head now comes out of my mouth, right? What I need, I will communicate. So if I can even follow that up and say, I'm insecure, I need some affirmation from you. And just, that's very blunt, right? It's very clear. It's not rude. It's just telling you what I need in the moment, right? And if I can do that, then I'll most likely get the outcome that I'm looking for. But if I am sitting around, wishing that you could mind read that I'm feeling insecure right now, you're going to be like, what the heck is going on? And then it's going to extend it. And then maybe I do ask some of those questions and then I get re-triggered, right? And so it's a different situation. Yeah.
Well, and human beings are what they are, even at their best self, right? So if somebody, who's not in addiction or whatever, is just not a talkative person. If you, to your point, if you don't communicate to that person, say, hey, I would like some affirmation, they fall into their default and that's okay. And you can't, and if you push too hard to make them something they're not, it's really going to make them uncomfortable in a lot of ways.
Well, and that's what, to bring up human design again, I know some people might feel uncomfortable with that. I think it's really awesome. It's helped us learn a lot about personalities and types and things like this. And some people are informers and initiators, and some people are receivers, and it's like they wait to be invited, right? And so understanding, even in your relationship dynamic, what the roles are there or what the typical default is. It's not that you can't work on those things, right? And it's not even that if you're an informer, you always want to inform. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes I don't want to. But now that I know that that is my thing, it's kind of a good reminder of, okay, well, maybe I need to in this situation if I'm not getting the outcome that I want, right? And so understanding as somebody more of a receiver or an initiator in the relationship, and maybe you don't even have to go get your human design. Maybe you just are listening to this and you go, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. And I'm a receiver. Like I need to be invited to do something. Like I don't really feel, like I'm the initiator in the group or whatever. And then that can be really helpful in how you learn how to communicate moving forward. Right.
Yeah. I'd actually like to add something on mind reading. And, you were talking about that, there's another side to that. When you get activated, you can mind read. So, for example, here would be a good example that I think would be incredibly,
or you attempt to mind read,
incredibly relevant to us. So, I get a lot done around here. I like to, the way my mind works is, if I walk in, I scan the house. I'm like laundry, dishes, vacuuming, straighten the table, right? I'll create a list in my mind. And so if we've got a lull, I will go do that. And that's all it is, right? That's all it is. It's kind of like that funny. Have you ever seen that meme of the man and the woman lying in bed, and the woman's like, I bet he's thinking about that woman. He's like, why are Tyrannosaurus Rex arms so short, But if you're looking for something from me, you may, and I think, this may have come up. You're like, why are you trying to not be around me?
Well, I think
and that's a mind reading thing because you're activated at that point.
Alternatively, you're also anticipating that I can mind read because I've also said, hey, can you just tell me what you're doing ahead of time? Like, I don't know that list that's in your head.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what else you say? Quick, stop the podcast.
Bad communication.
It's going off the rails.
No, but I mean, so that's an example of how it could go both ways and lead to something where maybe I'm anticipating that we have a plan to watch a movie at 8:00.
Right.
And then you're off doing your nightly list of chores, and you anticipate that I understand that there's this list of chores that needs to be done. And in my mind, like, that's not registering. Right. Yeah, and so both, like, in that specific example, it'd be something where we could both communicate, hey, what are you doing? And I do, right? I'm like, hey, I thought we were doing this. And you're like, no, I have this list to do. And I'm like, okay, you could have told me or whatever.
Yeah. So you knock it out and you get it done. And yeah.
So, but in both of those situations, what's in our head could have come out our mouth, right? Well, hey, do we have a plan to sit down at 8:00? Or you can say, hey, my plan right now, as opposed to sometimes you just kind of, because it's in your head, right? And you just get up and go. And again, human design, he's a manifesting generator. He can't be still. He's busy, has all the energy in the world. And so then you basically will just get up and do stuff, as opposed to communicating sometimes that, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is my plan for, like, the next hour is these 5 things. Right. Yeah. And so an hour later, I'll be like, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
You just, and, didn't invite me in and did, all this kind of stuff.
Incredibly productive. That's what I was
very
doing.
Productive. Yes, you were. Okay. So just a couple of personal examples there. Okay. So some things as you're thinking through this, if communication is something you want to improve, especially during recovery, it's such a touchy time in life and it's so vulnerable and there's so many fears and insecurities. And maybe you're not somebody that, and this is totally normal. Maybe you're not somebody that is really good right off the bat of identifying the feeling. Right. And so communicating that then is going to be more difficult. So one of the things that people recommend a lot is this thing called a feelings wheel. And you can just Google that. Some people will get, pillowcases or charts printed out or whatever. And it literally is a wheel of words that are the names of feelings. And it really is helpful because when you're in the middle of something that you don't understand, you can scan this feelings wheel and go, oh my gosh, it's insecurity or abandonment or whatever, and that may not have been the first word, or maybe you would think it was anger at first, but then you look at the wheel and you're like, no, actually it was frustration, right? And so that can be really helpful. So you can Google that and print it out and use that however you want, but that's just a tool kind of moving into this whole conversation I think would be beneficial.
And before you move off of that, once again, the whole notion of healing and living kind of in your true self is knowing, it's being aware. And so, the feelings wheel has got broad application, and you don't always have to walk around with the feelings wheel pillow in your life, but, maybe you're doing that just from just a generally, you'll be a better boss, a better parent, a better sibling, if you're more connected to your feelings.
Yeah. I think, it helps with everything. And we've talked about trauma processing and emotional processing a lot. And, that is part of the process, is kind of getting in tune with that. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention, and we're just about to get into specific, like how to step by step. So anybody that's more analytical, you're going to love this because it's like, well, how do I actually do this? We're going to give you the very, very specific application very shortly. But another thought that I wanted to use to kind of introduce this was, if you are using communication in your relationship, there should certainly be some boundaries around communication, particularly when you are going through recovery in a situation like this. So one that I thought of right away was, this mutual understanding between the two of you that you're moving forward and trying to communicate better, and you're moving towards reconciliation and a better relationship, right? If you're not both on the same page with that basic idea, then I don't really know that using these tools is going to be beneficial. It might be, but the idea, if you're trying to improve communication and you're going to work really hard and you're going to use the acronyms and all this kind of stuff, hopefully it is a two-way street that you guys have maybe even said this out loud. Again, what's in your head comes out your mouth. We need to work on this, and you mutually come to an agreement that these are the tools that you will use, right? Because I'm not sure that a lot of these tools are one-sided. Most of the ones that we're going to provide you are things that you would agree to do. And you're going to have a whole conversation around this that says, hey, we tend to push each other's buttons, or there's this particular topic that's really hard for us, and then we really escalate and stuff like that. And so you can begin to communicate about having boundaries around communication. And so those can be things like, hey, we're not going to yell. If one of us begins to raise our voice, we have a code word that says we're going to step out. We've mutually agreed ahead of time, we're going to step out of the room and cool off for 10 minutes, right? And then maybe you do the pause method that we taught you in the last episode to calm your nervous system down, to analyze what's going on in your mind and your body. And then you can come back and communicate more effectively. Maybe there's a boundary around listening without interrupting. Some of these ones that these tools that we're going to teach you today, that is a really good assumption up front that you guys mutually agree to say, hey, I'm going to let you answer these questions. I will not talk until you're completely done. Because the idea with some of these tools and resources and acronyms that we're going to teach you is that your partner can have the opportunity to fully express themselves and be heard before you have a chance to respond. And then the other thought around that is sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes it's a discussion of like, let's discuss this in order to take action on it and figure out a solution. But other times there are conversations where it's just, I need to be heard. Or like I said earlier, like I'm feeling insecure, I need affirmation, right? And so understanding the context of the conversation you're having so that if someone just needs support, you're not responding in a fix-it manner.
Right.
And so sometimes you can even say, if your partner comes to you and starts saying something that they're struggling with or they're frustrated with or whatever, you can even reply. Again, this seems so basic, but it's not something a lot of us do naturally. With, would you like me to just listen and support you? Or are you looking for me to fix it or for solution or for problem solving, right? Is this a problem? Do you want me to problem solve right now? Or do you just want me to support you? And if you can ask a question like that, half the time it's going to be like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I just want you to support me right now.
Well, it's interesting. I know one of the things I do at work when I walk around and talk to the employees on the floor is I always, towards the end, I will say, what do you need from me? Is there anything I can do for you? And I think I brought that into some of our tougher conversations when you were just venting. I was like, what can I do? And sometimes you have specific things.
Summarize it, right? You can say it the way I said it, or you can just generalize it like that. Like, what is it that you need from me right now? Or how can I support you right now?
Yeah. And so, and it helps because sometimes, to your point, you do need something. Sometimes you're like, I just need to get this off my chest. So listening is the best way to do it.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the actual tools and resources and techniques. And we have a bunch of them here. So pick and choose what it is that works for you, to delete what doesn't work for you. And I'm going to kind of mention that in a couple of them. There are some parts of some of these resources that may be a little bit triggering for you depending on where you are in your recovery. So just know that we're not telling you that you need to do all of these and you don't have to do every step of them, but hopefully you'll find something in here that's helpful for your particular situation.
Right.
So we started out with sobriety check-ins. And we've talked about those several times, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But sobriety check-ins are based on the behavior. They're based on the patterns, the habits, and the time. What do I say? Like the time pattern of like when they typically act out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so preferably with sobriety check-ins, these are volunteer check-ins from the addicted spouse, not something that the betrayed partner has to constantly prompt for. So what I mean by that is you guys come to a mutual decision and you communicate very clearly about what the structure of the sobriety check-in looks like, when you want it and how frequently you want it. And then the addicted partner comes to you voluntarily at those times. You're not having to constantly pull this out of them.
And good examples are you take a picture of the therapist office when you get there. That's a good example of it. Another one could be you're on a business trip and you have agreed to put out your survival kit. You take a picture of that and send it to your spouse and say, look, I'm all set in the room. Or a couple others we did is when you talk about working out in the morning, you get up in the morning, your spouse isn't awake yet. Hey, I'm awake. Everything's okay. So that's a sobriety check-in.
So basically, a lot of this is established when you get really clear on what your boundaries and expectations are in the relationship. And when you understand their addiction pattern, and then you create this type of sobriety check-in and you say, hey, I need a check-in every morning that answers these 3 questions. And you mutually agree to that. And then the betrayed partner or the addicted partner does that voluntarily at that time every single day. So that's the idea of a sobriety check-in. And that's very, very, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that because I know we've talked about it before, but that's very specific to your individual situation. If you do need support with creating boundaries and understanding those patterns and habits, I do have the What's Next course for betrayed partners. So that's available. There's a link in the show notes. Reach out if you have any questions about that. But there's a lot of information kind of around the boundaries and things like that in there. So the other one that we did that was recommended by our therapist was a nightly check-in. And we actually did that for a really long time. And I liked that one a lot, but this is where I want to put that little caveat that not every single step in all of these is something you're going to feel comfortable with day one. And so we've talked about this one also in previous podcasts, so we're not going to, again, spend too much time on it. But the pattern looked like you pray or do a devotion together if you want to. Then you move on to a question that is, what is something you did today that I don't know about? And so, that's just interesting. It's just spurring conversation. Like, what happened at work today that you didn't tell me yet? What's one thing you like or appreciate about me? So betrayed partners, I get it. The first couple months you're doing this, you probably don't want to answer that question. You're like, I really don't like you right now.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that question for a while. And then over time, I started answering it, right? And then that process of waiting until you're ready, but then also moving through the process can help with moving into the vulnerability as you get through recovery.
Yeah.
And so eventually I started answering that question and participating in the process. The other question is just an open-ended question. So something like, if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? And so it's a get to know you question about your partner. They get to share their thoughts and dreams. And, some of them are silly. What was the question you would always ask? I can't remember.
Oh, I'd be like, you're walking around a building, you come around the corner, there's a kangaroo there. You have all these like wild animal scenarios. Yeah.
Like that would never happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. What do you do if he's running at you or something like that?
To understand your partner's mind. And then the last thing was, what's one thing I can do for you tomorrow? So again, for the betrayed partner, that might be hard because to feel like you are being obligated to the person that hurt you, or you're serving the person that hurt you, that may feel really uncomfortable or bring up feelings of anger for a while. And that's okay. You don't have to do that. Maybe the person that has hurt you does that for 3 months before you end up reciprocating, right? Like that, maybe it's longer. Totally okay. That was a question that basically I did not participate in for a really long time. And then we started same as the other question, right?
And, with that, there's an objective here. The objective is to share with each other equally. And when you are on more of an equal footing, what betrayal does to a relationship is it creates an unequal footing. It thrusts the betrayed into the role of a parent. And by doing consistent, same as questions on both sides and forcing each partner to be thankful, which is a very healing thing, but they ask the same question. So it serves to return both of the partners to equality, which is where true, effective, beautiful relationship happens, is in those moments. And so, the questions can be silly, and you talk about a kangaroo, running after you or whatever, but ultimately, you always have to think of the broad 10,000-foot goal there. It's creating communication patterns that maybe didn't exist, or if they did exist, they've been completely destroyed.
Right.
And so you're trying to
or you feel
reestablish
like super vulnerable answering that question. So like that, that was kind of the idea that I was sharing. Like I didn't want to answer those. There was anger there, or there was a lot of vulnerability in me answering those or whatever. And so I just didn't for a while, but I would still participate in the check-in and do the parts that I could do as we continued to move through until I was ready.
Right.
Right. And I would actually have to Google the open-ended question. I was like, I don't know what an open-ended question is.
Yeah, I know. For some people, those are hard.
Yeah. But I Google it and be like, okay, I'll ask you this one. Where do you want to travel? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So hopefully some of these questions are starting to spur ideas of how you can communicate in a different way. And again, the idea here is that you have two people that have the same goal of moving forward in the relationship and deepening emotional intimacy and connection. And so if that's not the case, then it may be a situation where instead of starting with these, you're actually starting with a conversation around what is it that you're hoping to achieve together? What are your goals? Where are you at right now? Because if you guys can have a similar goal in terms of moving forward, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a goal of, I'm committing to staying in this relationship, right. For the next however long. It doesn't even have to be that.
Yeah.
It's just a goal of, hey, let's use these tools with the mutual goal of moving closer together. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But at least we know we're focusing on the same thing right now. And then if something changes, we can communicate that later. Do you want to share? I know you have a communication.
Yeah, there's a really good one here. The dynamics of betrayer-betrayed relationship are very much where, and especially, and we've talked about this before as well, when the betraying spouse gets into healing and starts to really find their footing under them and gets a process going that they can rely on, and their truth is out or their secret's out, but they're able to start to build some momentum, whereas the betrayed spouse is going to be all over the place. So there are moments where and this is a pretty standard thing, is the betrayer is feeling great, is going about their day, is doing their things in their journals and all that stuff, and things may be okay with the betrayed spouse, but then all of a sudden the betrayed spouse gets activated, triggered, whatever that may be, has a question, whatever, and it throws things off again. And so you have this distance between the healing paths of both spouses. And so one of the things that was really effective, and I always encourage people to get this book. It's actually called Help Her Heal. And I believe we've talked about this before, but it's by Carol Jurgensen Sheets. But she has and what she's trying to do is teach empathy, really kind of dial in on your empathy. And empathy is a major part of communication. Think about it, even beyond this particular topic, if you listen versus listen to speak, then that's a higher level of empathy. So one of the things that she has is what's called the AVR formula. And this is for the betrayer. So when the betrayer is talking or is approaching, let's say, a trigger from the betrayed spouse, the acronym is acknowledging the issue. That's the A. And that's requiring, acknowledge the situation and the accompanying pain. So you might say, hey, listen, I understand you're very hurt by this. I understand that my behavior has really created a loss of safety with you. Then you validate the feelings using the 5 primary feelings, and the 5 primary feelings that she talks to are anger, sadness, loneliness, happiness, or fear. I can see as you discuss that issue that you feel one of those, right? So as you're talking through your trigger, talking through what you saw, and you're crying right now, I see that you're angry, or I see that you're sad, or that you feel like maybe our relationship is ending, so you're very lonely. And then finally, you reassure that you're going to help this person heal. And I want you to know that I'm working on my recovery skills, and I never want to go back to that old addict behavior again. And so if you use AVR, is it scripted? It can be, but it's a lot better than oh gosh, are we going over this again? Or, Yeah, and
I would say in terms of the scripted, just make sure that what you're saying is sincere. You can use the pattern, but you can use the pattern in an unscripted way.
You really can. Yeah. And so I think it's, I think one of the things I used to tell you was, and this kind of got into this, is, hey, I will never do the behavior again, but I might mess up on the communication, but I'm going to, make sure that I'm doing this right and that I'm there for you and those kinds of things. So,
and I would even say, like, on the betrayed side, like, give them some grace when they're using tools like this, because I know sometimes the betrayed partner or the wife can, I've occasionally heard like they'll get frustrated because they're like, well, I think it's scripted, or I think they're just doing this because their group told them to do it. And in my mind, I go, well, yeah,
of course,
they're using the tools that they're being given because they're trying something new. And so on our side, we may be able to see that very clearly. Oh, this is something that someone told you to do, but that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, they're listening.
They listened, they took action on it. That's huge. It may not be perfect the first time,
right?
But even if you talk through this, and he may even say, hey, I'm going to try to use this, right? And then celebrate that. That's awesome. And then maybe it'll get better over time. But I think sometimes the other thing that I've heard is they feel like it's more scripted and less heartfelt. And now that's what I'm saying is make sure that this is sincere. So it may be scripted in terms of giving you a tool and a resource. That's amazing. And if you're using it, use it for the right reasons. Don't use it as a manipulation tool. Use it to get closer and to understand your partner and to be sincere.
Right.
Yeah. Because they'll that's the other thing that I will hear too, is they will see right through that and be like, they are just doing this because somebody told them. They don't actually mean what they're saying.
Right.
And so if you're just don't use it if that's the case.
Yeah. You want to be sincere and these tools are designed for improvement and for healing, and they're not designed for manipulation. And I guess anything can be used to manipulate, right? Anything can be used to manipulate or abuse or anything like that. But no, these are the development of empathy, development of connection, development of closer relationships.
Yeah, I like that one. I think it's really good. There's another one that we've personally never used, but it sort of squishes in what we just talked about in terms of the nightly check-in that we would do and the sobriety check-ins. And it's very common that therapists recommend this, and it's used a lot in the community. And it's called Fanos. And
Fanos?
Fanos.
Not Thanos?
No. Fanos. And that reminds me of FOX. Remember from what is that movie? Oh, hold on. It's coming. It's coming. Just around the corner. Just around the corner is the name of the bookstore in the movie. And it's the name of the original movie. Oh, why can I not remember? Do you not remember that? Oh, with Meg Ryan. And anyways, the little kid, his last name was
Sleepless
Fox.
in Seattle?
No, it wasn't Sleepless in Seattle. Anyway, everyone listening is going, it's this movie. And I'm going to remember it in a minute here. But anyway, her rival, his last name is Fox. And then he takes his nephew into her tiny little bookstore just around the corner. And he's learning how to spell. And so he keeps going FOX. And then,
is it a Tom Hanks movie?
Yes.
Too? Yeah.
Oh, this is going to drive me nuts. Anyway, okay. Fanos.
You've Got Mail?
Is it? Yes, it is You've Got Mail. How did I not remember that?
Yeah.
You've Got Mail. Anyway, FOX. Okay. So this is FANOS. Fanos. And so so the acronym stands for feelings, affirmations or appreciations, needs, ownership, and struggles, sobriety. So this, like I said, I kind of combined what we were doing with our nightly check-in and the sobriety check-in all in once. And for the betrayed partner, there may be some things in here that are a little triggering. So let's kind of walk it through. So the first one is feelings, right? We can both share our feelings, our experiences, where we're at today. I think that, mutually, that's great. This is what I'm doing. Use the feelings wheel. You've talked about the faster scale for men in recovery, whatever it is that you need to kind of tap into like what you're feeling. Communicate that, share that. That's the first step. The second one is the affirmations and appreciations. This is, appreciating your partner, saying something positive about who they are, what they're doing. And for the betrayed partner, maybe what you're saying in the beginning, if this makes you uncomfortable, is something like, hey, I'm really proud of the recovery work you're doing, right? It's not like you're not, being super gushy about the relationship or anything like that, but maybe you're saying like, hey, I really want to affirm you in that I noticed that I've never had to remind you that you're to go to your weekly therapy session. Yeah. And I just want to let you know that I really see that and appreciate that.
Well, I also think too is it can, and I think this extends beyond this process, is the practice of being thankful. The practice of being thankful is very, very healing. And it really changes your life when you can look at somebody who's maybe hurt you and say, hey, I'm really thankful for for what we've done here or what we've done. It changes you. It really changes. I think it changes your brain. I think it changes how you think about things. So it changes how you view things. Your body listens to those things. So I think being thankful, and a lot of these check-ins have that. Being thankful is a major part. And if you're finding you're struggling being thankful over something, keep working on that.
To be in that particular thing that you're talking about, it doesn't have to be aimed at your partner.
Right.
Because the reality is, for the first so many months, you're not going to feel thankful for that person. And focusing on thankfulness or gratefulness specifically around your situation is going to be hard. So what you're saying, though, I think, is a practice of gratefulness in your daily life helps train those brain patterns, which then sets the filter of you looking for more positive experiences in life and brings your general attitude up. And that's very true, because we've talked a lot about really how to train your brain, and the whole goal through recovery for both of you is to actually choose new patterns and practice them. And a gratefulness practice of like, I'm going to wake up every morning and think of 3 things I'm thankful for. I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to review the day, and I'm going to find things that happened today that I can be thankful for. That's awesome. Or maybe you just take a walk and you're like, I'm really thankful that the sky is blue and the trees are green and there's a new flower that's blooming today, right? It doesn't have to be directed at your partner in order to begin training those. And over time, as you practice these acronyms and this communication, you can slowly kind of weave it in there. Like I was saying, like maybe it's not day one, I'm really thankful that we've been together 12 years when 10 of them we were, unfaithful, whatever, right? Like you're not going to say stuff like that, but maybe you do say something like, I'm really thankful that you have found a support group that you're connecting with, and, all those kinds of things. Or I'm really thankful that you have started sharing your feelings with me, right? Those are the types of things. And then as time progresses, it can get deeper and deeper and deeper, and build on it. So the next letter is N, and that stands for needs. And I just want to, maybe this is just my brain, but to me, that word is kind of annoying. I don't like that. Like, share your need with me today. Because I immediately in this world go to the whole stereotype of men saying, well, sex is a need. So I kind of like hate that word association, particularly in these situations. I don't like that. Don't tell me what you need, right? I would change this to a request, sort of like what we were talking about in the other check-in of, is there something I can do for you tomorrow? But this is specifically it's the opposite. It's telling your partner what you need or what you want, right? And so I feel like that can be really tricky depending on where you are in recovery. So I think you have to be careful what would fall in that category.
Well, and also you have to remember, you don't have to give that to them. Like nobody's obligated to give anybody's request, for a need from any level is to give that to them. Nobody's obligated. Now you based on your ability to empathize with the situation and your ability to kind of go through that, you make that value determination.
I would say in this letter, sex is off the table.
Yeah.
I would say that's like that. I guess that's my concern here, is that certain people would use this as like, well, it's been a long time.
Well, yeah. And I also think
that's not the point of these.
This is connection.
Yes, that's not the point of these. The point is like, I need to feel more secure in the relationship. And so, if you would call me at lunch tomorrow and give me an update, that would really help me.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's kind of the idea here. From your side, what would that be? Can you think of anything?
Oh, I mean, and we talked about it a little bit. Hey, I need to be able to get some sleep.
Yeah, there you go.
I need to, as much as I know you want to talk about these things at 11, 12 o'clock at night, I have to get up and go to work. So, I will be there. And if we really, really got to talk through it, we can.
Yeah, attack, I'll wake up.
Yeah. But I need to get some sleep so I can be effective at work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a good way. So I don't know if that word is triggering to you. I get it. I would maybe just change it to communicating your requests. Something like that. And I know it would mess up the Thanos acronym, but I think it could be beneficial if that word is not effective for you. All right. So the other one, again, same thing. It depends on where you are in your journey, because both of you are supposed to answer these questions, and this can be difficult. The O stands for ownership. So basically taking responsibility for something, and what does that look like? And in the very beginning, I would have been really annoyed with this as a question. I would have been like, all of this is your job. I don't need to take ownership of anything, right? And as we have progressed, there's been a lot through my recovery journey that I go, you know what, this isn't your problem. This is my problem. And so that took time of me really doing a lot of that deep work and emotional processing and trauma work on myself in relation to betrayal, but a lot of other things in my life. Yeah. And then coming to say, hey, like this problem that we're facing in our relationship, there's nothing you can actually do about it right now. It has to do with my interpretations or my previous trauma or XYZ here. And I know that I'm responsible to fix it. So yes, 100%. I don't want to take responsibility away from the betrayed partner because we do have to take responsibility for our own healing in this process, whatever that looks like. So that's typically where I would think that this answer would go, right? But it could even be like smaller than that, right? It could be like, hey, I forgot to take the trash out today and I take responsibility for that. So I'm going to put a reminder in my phone, right? It doesn't have to always be these super deep things, but that's just where my mind went immediately was like, what do you mean I have to take ownership about something, right? When you were the one that betrayed me, right? So yeah, it can be really, really small. Like I forgot to do this. I'm going to put a reminder on my phone so that I can do this next week for, because we've agreed to do that. Right. So that is, taking ownership, which in my mind, the betrayed partner, that's part of communication in general, which is
right.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Like I understand that I did this. That's caused you to feel this. Right.
Yeah, that's it's part of empathy too. But yeah, there's a strong sense of ownership that should come out of the betrayer.
And then the last one is S, which is struggles or sobriety. So again, kind of combining some of the things we've talked about before, you can either share kind of what a struggle is that you're having right now, or where you're at in sobriety. So that could be the sobriety check-in.
And if I could on that, and I see this in people as they heal, those who were addicted. As they heal initially early on, it might be I'm struggling to act out, right? Or to not act out. What you find as people continue to move through their healing is they will struggle with a particular situation. So, my mother came into town and she spoke to me like I was a little kid again. And that really activated some emotions in me. You really see that as people heal. So and that's actually a pretty healthy thing. So, I think what a lot of folks will forget is they'll think that, hey, once they're healed and they won't ever have any issues. And that's just not true. Life is life. And people are going to activate you. People are going to make you sad. You're going to experience loss. You're going to do all of those things because life still moves on. But it's just the notion of becoming more aware and saying, these are my struggles right now. This is what's bothering me. And being able to communicate that maybe in a way that you've never communicated before.
Yeah, I think, again, with this one, it can be either really deep, right? Or it can be kind of shallow. Like I'm really struggling to create a routine right now.
Yeah.
Or with the betrayed partner, it could be like, hey, I'm really struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Like, let's be honest, there are phases where that happens, or I'm really struggling to make dinner, or, it could be some really basic things, or you can really go into, hey, I'm really struggling to not ask you questions at 10 o'clock at night. Right. Like, just depending on where you're at. So, So everything we talked about so far, have been really, ways to improve connection with each other. These types of check-ins are about creating connection with each other. So I think actually what we'll do is we will do a part 2 because the next tools and resources that we have that we kind of want to go through are more about, when things are difficult or in conflict, how to kind of communicate in those times. So I think that's what we'll do is we'll kind of separate. These ones have been really good to listen and to communicate and to empathize. And so I think we're in a little bit of a separate phase with the next ones. And then just a final note kind of around these types of acronyms and these tools and resources. Create a space that feels really safe for you where you guys communicate ahead of time how you want to do these. So sometimes that means that one partner will answer all of the questions in the acronym first, and then the other partner will answer all of them. Or maybe you want to have a little bit more of a dialogue and you go, hey, we're going to take one of these letters at a time. You answer it, I answer it, then we discuss, right? Whatever works for you to make sure that you feel heard and that you feel like you can listen to.
Right. I think the other part of this too is remember the reason they create formats is because it's easier to remember. And so anytime that you can do things on a repetitious basis, you start to become better at it. You become better at it. So you can share more. You can think over the next 24 hours about what you're going to say underneath. And so that's why it's important to really commit to these things and say, hey, we're going to do this at 9:30 every night. Or we're going to do, and it's a really powerful, once again, we talk about changing your brain patterns, and unfortunately the betrayed has to go through that too, because their brains have been affected by the trauma that's come out. So we're trying to create healthy brain patterns again that can really drive healing, awareness, and connection. Yep.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast interesting or helpful, it would mean so much if you leave a 5-star review or post a screenshot and share on social media. We are on a mission to share the message of recovery, and you can help get the word out. If you know a friend who could use this podcast, please share it.